All right, it's 10:32, and I think I've admitted everyone who was waiting in the lobby, so we'll go ahead and get started. Dr. Russ Wyland is here with us today. He's a nationally recognized leader in humanities research and grant making. He retired from the National Endowment for the Humanities in June of 2025 after 35 years of public service, during which he served as the agency's first director of outreach, acting director, and deputy director of the Division of Research Programs. He was the program officer for NEH Fellowships, and we're fortunate enough to have him with us here at the University of South Florida currently as a fellow. He's serving in senior research fellow in USF's Research Development Institute. He's also a fellow at the Library of Congress's John W. Kluge Center. So we're delighted that Russ could come and speak with us today, and I'm really looking forward to his presentation as usual. I'll be monitoring the chat, so if you have questions, please feel free to put those in there. Russ will pause at a couple of points during the presentation to answer those. He's also set aside time at the end of his presentation to answer any of your other questions. We encourage you also to raise your hand to be interactive. I think that Russ enjoys chatting with you personally. Even though I can read what they put in the chat, it's always better if you raise your hand and come online and ask the questions in person. So Russ, I'm gonna be quiet and hand it.
Thank you so much, David. Good morning, everyone. I am so delighted to do this. I wish I could be there in person in some room somewhere with all of you, but it's great to share this virtual space with you. I'm going to share my screen because, of course, I have a PowerPoint, which wouldn't dare show up without a PowerPoint. And as David mentioned, I think he set these out already. So there you are. I should say when the PowerPoint is up on my screen here in my home office, I can't see if you raise your hand or something like that. So don't hesitate to simply butt in. Turn on your mic, say, hey, Russ, stop, because all I can see is my presentation right now. As David mentioned, we will have another workshop at 2 o'clock. That one is about collaboration, so team-based research. This one is on individual research, the kinds of things that you pursue on your own. We're going to look at 3 deadlines in particular, but by my count, in the coming year, there are 42 deadlines planned for individual research scholars in the humanities. Obviously, you're not all of them will apply to you, but there are a lot of deadlines out there. So I think right now, one of the things we can say is, yes, it's really hard to get money in the humanities, but there are opportunities out there. And if you're watching and planning, there can be opportunities for you to get funded. So we will talk about that. I've worked with almost the 42 organizations or the 42 deadlines. I've at least worked with most of those organizations. So if you have a deadline in mind and you say, well, I really want to go for this thing at Stanford, we can probably talk about it, and I can tell you, I probably know just enough to be dangerous, and we can talk about that. We will be having more of these. We will be having some in-person seminars or in-person workshops at USF Tampa and USF St. Pete. Those will probably happen near the end of September. We're still working on the dates and the location, so I won't say much more there. We will also, I hope, be having some kind of midwinter seminar series where we do a deep dive over many days and really look at the kinds of skills and competencies one needs to be a successful grant writer. So let's move along. Here's just a slide about me. And I really can't add much that David didn't already in my mention in my introduction, except that I'm trained as a research scholar in the humanities. My background is in English. I still am an active scholar. I still write, writing right now on the history of sermon periodicals. That's kind of my jam right now. And I'm really loving that. And it's really important to me. And it keeps me in touch with the kinds of things and the kinds of issues that humanities scholars are facing all the time as they do their research and things that they have to confront. I was at NEH for a little over 35 years. That's where I developed most of my thinking on research funding. And other than that, I will just mention that I'm also USF has been extremely generous and has made me a senior research fellow. And one of the things that they are supporting is a field guide to humanities grant writing, which is something that I think the humanities has needed for a very long time. It's designed for scholars and for those working in sponsored research and at the pre-award, doing pre-award work. It's forthcoming. It will be peer reviewed. I'm still working on that piece. But most importantly, it will be open access. So not only can you have a copy, and you'll be able to order a paper copy if you wanted, but it will be there on your desktop. You can send it out to the people you work with. If you have friends who are also doing this kind of work, send it to them. If you have PhD students, give it to them. So we're hoping that making it open access will mean that we'll get more people interested. So what I'm going to cover today, we have about 90 minutes, 80 now. We're going to look at, I think, I want to do kind of 6 things. One, I just want to talk first about building your plan for the year and why I think that's important for everyone to do. It is the grants game rewards people who are organized. And I'm not always the most organized person. I've let you see my office behind me, but let me tell you, I had to work really hard to get it to look even this clean. I am not the most organized, but I do see and understand the importance of organization for your plan for the year. Then we're going to look at 3 different kinds of fellowships. All have upcoming deadlines, deadlines that are rapidly approaching. So we're going to look, but also because they are sort of representative. And I think as we talk about them, you will see that they are reflected in other deadlines that are happening that we're not going to talk about. So we're going to look at ACLS fellowships. We're going to look, that's a long-term fellowship, so that's a full year. We're going to look at a short-term fellowship because that's a very different kind of application that you would need to write. And we're going to look at the American Philosophical Society's Franklin Research Grants. People often think because it has philosophical in the title or in the institution that there's probably nothing there for them if they're not a philosopher. Wrong. They have sort of the 18th century view of philosophy that includes everything, including the social sciences and some of the sciences. We're going to look at we're going to talk a little bit about residential fellowships, and then I'm going to look at the Library of Congress, in part because I know from the pre-registration that there are a lot of people on this call who are junior, and this will help you. It will also, it also, I think, is very representative of residential fellowships. So I think there's a lot of good things that can be learned by just looking at the Library of Congress, John W. Kluge Center. Then we're going to have, going to step back from that and talk about your proposal and the arguments that you're going to make in your proposal, and how you decide what arguments to make and the things that you can do to improve the applications that you write. And then finally, we're going to have time for questions and answers and discussion, even though, as David said, we can have those throughout. I don't think we're going to be so pressed for time that we can't pause a little bit and have a discussion. Is everyone good with that?
It sounds really great. Thank you. That's a wonderful overview of an incredible talk. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. And I wish I could see who said that. But I'll just.
Sandy Justice.
Oh, hi, Sandy. Great to hear you. So let's talk about building a plan. It's it's a simple thing to do. And I have no doubt that everyone on this call can produce a plan for themselves. And it's so valuable. And yet I would say 95% of the people who apply for grants don't really have a plan. They're working ad hoc. So a deadline is announced. They decide at the last minute if they're going to apply or not, and then they do. The act of applying throws their schedule into a spin because they are waiting to the last minute. So I want to talk a little bit about how you can plan for the year and encourage you to do that. I want to say it will help keep your sanity, and it will cut you a lot of slack during the course of the year. I also want to say that there's no single formula. You're going to look at factors internal and external, where you are in your project, where you are in your family life. All of those things are going to determine if you apply or not. And they're all right. They're all right. Some years you will see that you can really make a charge and apply for many grants. That's great. Some years you're going to look and you're going to say, ugh, lots going on this year, and I need to sort of cut back. That's great. Try to set yourself a little goal of applying to at least one grant a year. It just keeps you in the game, keeps you thinking in a way about your project. First thing I want you to do is to be honest with yourself. And this is a sort of a reflection exercise that I want you to do, at least once a year. And that is, I want you to ask yourself some questions and I want you to answer them honestly. And those will be your guide. You'll see these pop up in other suggestions I provide later on. So one, and these are just based on things I saw at any age. Who is the audience, or who are the audiences for your project? Now, everyone wants to get the most eyes on their work. And people want to write in a way that's accessible by a lot of people. But that doesn't mean that your audience is automatically there for the general reading public. But a lot of people in a grant application feel that they need to define their audience as large as possible to make it attractive to a funder. What you need to do is define your audience in a way that's accurate and then make the case for that. So if your project is for a scholarly audience, and you hope someone on the outside picks this up, but that's not what you're trying to reach or who you're trying to reach. Know that, because that's going to change the way you write your application. If you don't define your audience correctly, reviewers will be thinking, okay, I have to look for evidence that they can reach this broad audience that they've defined. Think about your audience critically. Answer honestly, who is your audience? Where will you be in the project when you apply for funding? This is really about putting together your work plan. A lot of people want to make their project sound farther along than it really is. You know, oh, I'm just about done with my research and I'm about to write. Is that really true? Ask yourself, it doesn't matter. ACLS, NEH, most of the residential centers, APS, they fund at any stage, but you are going to make a different application, or you're going to write a different application depending what kind of where you are in your project. So don't try to make your project something that it's not. Don't make it more farther along than it really is. Try to really get sort of a handle on that, because it's going to enable you to write a better work plan and make a better argument in your application. And then what do you think you're actually going to get done by the end of the grant? A lot of people want to show that they're a superstar and they can write a huge amount or do a huge amount of work. And I'll be honest, I said I'm a panelist for ACLS. You know, we just kind of roll our eyes at some of the work plans we get. How much can you get done? And it will vary with everyone. I'm the world's slowest writer, or at least I feel like it. If I can write maybe 3 chapters in a year, I think that would be great. I'm a slow writer. I know that, and I have to own it. And when I put together my application, I have to own that. So answer honestly. Think about your grant calendar like a menu. You don't need to order everything. You're not that hungry. Find things that you want that will satisfy you. So every year that might be different. You might swap out things, but think of the grant calendar as a list of possibilities. But you don't have to go through down every one. You'll make yourself crazy. Plan your calendar. Here's how I do it. I start with a deadline. So we start, for example, with ACLS. If I were going to apply for ACLS, it has a September 15th deadline. I know how I work. And so I build the plan according to how I work. Every grantor is supposed to, sort of best practice is to get the announcement out there 8 weeks in advance. And so I start right away. And I just put in about, when I say I work for a week on something, I mean 4 to 6 hours, 1 or 2 nights a week, or just a little bit in the morning. So it's not much, but because I've spread it out over 8 weeks, I get it done, and I can get it done while not disrupting all of my other schedule. Reading the guidelines, still the #1 thing. Do it the first week. Memorize those guidelines. When we do, fellowships are often pretty simple guidelines, but when you get into more complex grants for collaborative, they get very, very picky. And so read them, take notes on them. I leave time to update my CV and to create a bibliography out of what I'm doing, and to contact my letter writers. Big one, if letter writers are required, contact them early, let them know what's coming so that they can plan their schedules. I leave myself about 4 weeks for my narrative. And again, 4 to 6 hours a week. I leave a week for editing, and that's 8 weeks in total. Now, the thing I'm independent. And, so I'm not attached to a college or a university. But if you are attached to a college or university, you might have to go through your research office. The Research Development Institute at USF would love to help you, but there might be an office you have to go to. Factor that in as well. I don't have to, so I don't. I then I look at what's going to happen at the deadline going forward. So I add the approximate notification date and the earliest and latest start dates so that I know, 3 months from now, when someone's asking me to do something, to write a book review or do something, I have those dates and I can make the best decision. Again, this is how I keep myself sane when I apply for grants, and I strongly encourage you to do something like this. Always have a running list of resources, people who've won grants that you know, people at grant organizations. I'm going to give you some of those just so that you can start your list if you don't have one. Online resources, the people on your campus who will help you. But there can also be, go search around YouTube. There's all sorts of help available and out there for you. It's easiest if you just kind of put that on a list, and you can be making that list and adding to that list and taking off things off of that list when you have like that 5 minutes in the library before you want to leave. And you can just do a little bit. It's a great thing to do. And finally, as I've said, this is your time to build yourself some grace. This kind of calendar will keep you sane through the year and still allow you to apply for as many grants as you think you can handle throughout. Any questions on building your calendar or building your plan?
May I make a comment?
Yes, absolutely.
When I meet with early career researchers and we talk about their long-term plans, I also encourage them to think of early career opportunities and put those at the front of a funding strategy, because then you're only competing against other early career folks. And then building on that trajectory in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years down the road, as you move on a tenure clock, you can build on what you have achieved in an early career award or fellowship.
That's a great suggestion. I would add this as well, and I'll talk, at least with ACLS, I'll talk about this. ACLS actually divides their applications up when they review them into junior scholars and to senior scholars. So even though it doesn't say that it's for junior scholars, if you do a little bit of research and you ask some questions of the people who work at ACLS, you will learn that that it is, if you're a junior scholar, you're going to be competing against other junior scholars. So not all opportunities like that will be obvious. So ask questions. And I would also say, think about, when you're looking at your career, building momentum. Start, usually smaller awards have much better, there's a much better chance of being funded. So think about, those small awards. They might not get you what you want, the big time off that you want, but they build the case for when you go to ACLS, for example, and the reviewers are looking at your CV, so.
We have one more question, Russ. Go ahead,
yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for this for this webinar. I'm a mid-career faculty member at Florida State University. And so first of all, I just wanted to thank the organizers for opening this up to your sister universities around the state. This is really wonderful. I really appreciated your suggestion to apply to one grant a year. I think that's a terrific strategy. But I had a question about the kind of timing of that. We all work at big state institutions where we have a lot of administrative responsibilities in addition to our teaching responsibilities. And I know in my department, our chair encourages us to think about aligning grant timelines with sabbaticals, for example, which for us are every 6 years for the research faculty, or you're eligible every 6 years for the research faculty. I guess I'm wondering about how to think about balancing your departmental responsibilities with the ambition to apply to a grant every year, given that you have to have a memorandum of understanding with the university, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a great question. I did a lot of work with FSU, so maybe I've met you before. And I know there are other FSU folks on the line that I know from previous webinars or from previous workshops. Sometimes, one of the things that drives me crazy, frankly, is that a lot of institutions want you very much to apply for grants. It's really important to them. It figures into their AAU ranking. It figures into all sorts of things, and they want you to do that. And then they make it really hard for you to do that. And that's unfortunate. In my mind, the fellowships, the ACLS, all of these, the APS and Kluge Center, other residential centers. Residential centers are a slightly different thing, but I would be applying even if you don't think you're going to be able to take it. You can always turn it down. Most of the grants have ways that you can defer beyond what they publicize. It is, I think every institution recognizes it's important that their faculty members be winning these things and they're allowed to take them. And so usually there will be flexibility. Now, I do think you still have to tell your institution when you apply and go through whatever paperwork or whatever they want you to do. But you usually have enough time once you win to figure out how you're going to make that work and work that out with your institution. So, I don't know, what your particular situation is and what FSU demands of you, but I think just the act of applying is really important. It helps you understand your project in a different way. It's not like writing a book précis or something like that. It's actually thinking about the arguments that matter to your work. And I think it helps you see your project differently. So I think it's important to do even when you don't win. So I don't know if that helps. But most of these programs will have a certain amount of flexibility built in to make sure people can take the awards. And I think there's a growing awareness at humanities by humanities funders that that flexibility is needed more and more. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. And thank you also to Sandy for the comments in the chat. I do think that it depends from department chair to department chair. Like my department chair really wants us to sign a memorandum of understanding before we even apply. And sometimes we'll say, no, you can't apply for example, the ACLS this year because we really need you teaching, or we really need you in this administrative role. And I agree with you that that's just incredibly frustrating because the university is really steering its faculty towards applying and applying and applying. And then some department chairs are saying, no, actually you can't. So we're just kind of stuck in the middle, but I appreciate your suggestions very much. Thank you.
I would love to go to lunch with that department chair and talk to that person about that strategy. I think that undercuts a lot of things. A lot of things they're trying to achieve in the department by doing that. But anyway, that's not my business. That's not me. So good luck. So let's talk about the American Council of Learned Societies. They make about 65 grants a year. It depends a little bit on what the stock market is doing, quite frankly. Stock market's been pretty good lately. And so they've been making some money. So it's, that might go up slightly or down slightly depending on what the market is doing. They offer awards for 6 to 12 months. I've been serving on as a panelist. I served this past year. So I've gotten a little bit better appreciation for what they do. They ask you to prepare a few things, and you should know that's right up front. There's an application form, which of course every grant application has their variation on a form. There's a 3-page proposal, single-spaced. Is this a big deal? Yes, it is. Your application will be declared ineligible if you don't follow the spacing. 3 pages, single-spaced. A work plan, 1 page, single-spaced. Bibliography, 2 pages. A publication list. They don't want, if you have a 2-page CV, a lot of people attach those. But they give you the option of not attaching a CV, just a publication list. And a lot of people do that, and that allows them to include more publications than maybe a 2-page CV would hold. And then they ask you for a personal statement. I love the personal statement because what it is designed to do, in my mind as a panelist, it knits everything together. Sandy has heard me talk a lot about how when people evaluate applications, I've seen this over and over again, what they're trying to do is create a little story about you and your project, where that project comes from, what it means to you now, how it excites your passions, and where you're going to take it. And that personal statement is what can help do that. Don't use your statement to just restate what's already in your proposal. Provide the reason that you're doing this, the reason that you're passionate about what you do, how you've come to this project, and where you're going to take it. That's what the statement is going to help do, and it's going to help create, because a panelist, when they get in a room around a table with or around a virtual table with other panelists, they want to be able to repeat your story. And I think the statement does that beautifully. Now, what does the ACL not include? They don't include letters. No letters. And that's a choice they've made. It's a big debate in the granting world in the humanities about letters. Are they good? Are they bad? And they've decided to remove letters. And so that's one thing off of your plate. The process is pretty simple there. The staff screens your application. So it's going to have eyes on it before it goes out for review. They're going to send it to 3 disciplinary panelists, and they are going to make very short comments and give it a grade. And based on those grades, the top about 1/3 move forward to the interdisciplinary panels. And again, these are separated junior and senior scholars. And then the interdisciplinary panel will decide, will basically be given 8 slots. Will be asked, and the top 4 will be funded, and the bottom 4 will be in contention, and those will be reviewed by the staff, and the strongest of those batches of what's left will be given awards. They also have a thing which I very much like, and I know this might not apply to FSU or USF or any of the R1s, but if you're at a non-R1 and you are in contention, they have a way that if you're not going to be funded, to give you a stipend to do some of your work. It's a smaller amount of money. I don't want to say it's a consolation prize. That's how it feels. But let me tell you, when you spend the money, it's going to feel pretty good to have that money, and they count you as an ACLS fellow. So it's a good thing to know about. The evaluation criteria I've put there on the right side of the slide, and you can read through all of that. It's important. I think the first criteria here is really important. The potential of the project to advance the field or fields of study in which it is proposed and makes an original and significant contribution to scholarship. This asks you to tell them why what you're doing is important. But remember, advancing the field, adding to the discussion, making an original and significant contribution to scholarship. These are not the same things. People say, oh, I just need to talk about the significance of my project. Talk about each of those 3 things because they are different. Your project might, in fact, make a contribution to the scholarship, but it's not going to add anything to the discussion. You might stir things up and really get the discussion going, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're advancing the field. So think about those things as different, and then craft your application to address all of them. Because I tell you, the panel will look at all of those things. I think it's particularly important when you're dealing with interdisciplinary panels that you think about the clarity. So it's the quality of the proposal, which is number 2. When I am out of my depth, if I get an application, my background's in Victorian literature. If I get an application on dance with the ancient Greek dance, for example, I'm just making that up. I don't have a lot to go with. But what I can tell you is if the application was put together well, if it was argued well, if the methodology was clear. So all of those things that you put into your proposal, I can tell you if you've written a good proposal. That's what I'm going to bring to the discussion. Chances are we'll have someone there who works on dance or works on classics who will know if you're bringing the original contribution so that's how panels work. Everyone brings a little something different, and what you put together, your proposal, think about it as the way you're speaking to those interdisciplinary panelists who are outside your field. One thing ACLS doesn't mention explicitly, they mention it, they refer to it in number 4, but they don't mention it explicitly, is momentum. This is a big thing on their panels. They want to fund people who are and projects that are going somewhere. And we look over and over again, does this application, does this person and this project have momentum? And so after you draft your application, read your application with that question in mind. Does this show I'm going somewhere? My career is going somewhere. My my agenda is moving along. It's really important to make sure that the panelists see that you're going somewhere. A couple of things to note if you've applied for ACLS before. They've added an AI statement. If you use AI to help write your application, and that's like a whole different webinar, if you use it in some way, they ask that you document that, and they talk about that. So that's new this year. Pay attention to it. I suspect ACLS is a leader in humanities funding. You will now see this statement on AI trickle out to other funders. They have clarified that you can actually ask for a work plan that is non-continuous. So for example, if you want to work a summer and then take a term off and then work the next term, you can do that. They explain how you can do that and what you're going to need to do to explain. That's going to have to go into your work plan. It's an option. I never realized it was an option because it was so buried before. They've now elevated it and made it clearer, again, to make their rewards more flexible. They have moved, they had a 5th criterion last year on inclusive excellence. And this was their way to make sure to kind of level the playing field, to make sure that everyone had an equal chance. What they've done is they've kind of put that above the criteria and said, this is an aim of ACLS, and we will be looking at all our decisions with this in mind. But panels, it's my understanding, applied this in very different ways, didn't know how to apply it. A lot of panelists ignored it. So they're basically taking and saying, okay, we're gonna take control of this, and we're making this an ACLS priority. So inclusive excellence. So if you are working on a project that addresses something that is important at this moment, and provides something like racial justice, which I know I think in Florida that's problematic to talk about. I know up in Virginia, if inclusive excellence, if you can make the case for it, do it. Know that it's not going to keep an excellent application from being funded, but the staff will be looking, and that will be factoring into their decisions. So just in summary, is it worth it? Yes. If any of you make sourdough bread, you will know that there's something called the mother. And the mother is that little bit of dough that you can use with every batch you make. And you save a little bit and you use it again and use it again. And that's what I like about ACLS. Their application is a mother application. It's very, it has almost everything that other good applications require. So you can always use it. It happens early in the year, early in the academic year. So if you have later, deadlines, you can, I don't want to say recycle, but you at least have a place to start. And I think ACLS gives you the kind of, the opportunity to write that kind of application. You get readers' comments. Always find out, can I get readers' comments out of this deal? Because it makes it worthwhile. And I think they're designing it and they're reworking it to be even more flexible than it already was. So are there questions on ACLS? And I know there are some people on the call who are applying, so
I do have a question, Russ, from
Sure.
Elizabeth. She says, if she's understood correctly, then the non-continuous work plan might be a way around departmental or university stipulations about administrative or teaching needs. Is that correct?
That would certainly make sense to me, and I suspect that's exactly why ACLS did it. I don't remember that Chris Thornton, who is the #2 guy at ACLS, one of the links I give you in my slideshow is to a YouTube video of him talking about ACLS, if he addressed this. But Elizabeth, look at their guidelines because they are much more explicit about what you can do with your work plan. And that might be a way to make it more palatable to your department chair. Sure. I even wonder, now that I think about it, if you could propose 2 summers, 6 months. That's a possibility too. The thing is, there is flexibility here. I should also note that if you are at an HBCU, you're at a community college, or some other kind of organization that's sort of, there are opportunities in addition for you in other programs at ACLS. They have quite a suite. Those have later deadlines, but they're there. So
thank you.
You're welcome. So many people don't apply for short-term grants. They seem like they're a lot of work, a little bang for a lot of buck or something. Well, they seem like they're a lot of work for not a lot of payoff, but I think they're worth it. It forces you to look at your project in a different way, and I think that's always good. It's really not that much work, especially with American Philosophical Society. I admire the fact that they have a very compact application. There's a good chance, you have a much better chance of being funded. I think for the Franklin Research Grants, they get about between 700 and 800 applications a year, and they make about 100 awards. Those are pretty good odds. So they look great on your resume, and they're one of those things that you can use later on to show that you have momentum. There is one thing, doing the prep for this presentation, one of the things I really wanted to do is go talk to all of my colleagues at these granting agencies and say, let's get together and do things similarly. So they don't give you a page limit, but they do give you a character limit, inclusive of spaces. So they make you, you can see what they ask you to do. They ask you for, it's a form in which you drop your project description, your bibliography, your publication list. So in that respect, it's similar to ACLS. The project description, however, is shorter. And so it forces you to be more succinct about your project because honestly, they care less about your significance. They care more about your organization because what they're doing is they're funding your research. So they're funding you to travel somewhere, to get into a library, to do your writing. How well organized your project is will determine how competitive you are for a Franklin. They're also going to ask you for a budget. And so they ask you to break it down into categories and then justify it. and you get a whopping 3,000 characters for your justification. But here is the most important thing maybe that I can say about Franklin. If you are applying, you are asked to supply 2 letters. The letters are due on October 1, the same day that your application is due. If you wait until October 1 to start your application or to create an account on their site, your letter writers might have less than 24 hours to submit their letters. Don't do that to your letter writers. And if they don't get them in, you're just out of luck. Here's the key. As soon as you think you are going to submit an application for a Franklin Research Grant, open an account, put in your letter writers. They will get the request immediately, and they will have then as much time as you do to put together your application. Now, you're going to have to give your letter writers, of course, you're going to have to communicate with them and make sure they understand what you're doing. But if you wait until the last minute, you will be screwed because your letter writers won't be able to get their letters in on time. That's a quirk of APS. So keep that in mind. One of the other things that I like is just it's very streamlined. It's a 4-month process, which is small compared to ACLS, which is about a 7 or 8 month process. They do an eligibility screening. They do a mail out panel or an online panel that does not convene. So they score them. You don't get any feedback as an applicant, but you get the response pretty quickly, and you can start almost immediately. If you are going to apply to work over in England, particularly in London in particular, you can ask for an increase in your award. It will be provided by either the British Library or the British Academy. Both contribute money to bring Americans over to use their, so that's great. This is painful to me. I did not ask. I won one of these once upon a time. I did not ask. And so I did not receive. And so basically I left money on the table as an applicant because I didn't follow that instruction. So I did get money, and I was forever grateful to APS for, it was right after I got my PhD and I needed it, and it was awesome. But I think I left money on the table, so don't do that.
Russ, we have a quick question about budgets.
Sure. Yeah.
In the past, Elizabeth has applied for grants that involve specific budgetary requests. And as a humanities scholar, she finds that especially difficult unless she has specific travel needs, which she often does not. So mostly what she needs is time. She wonders, do you have recommendations for guidelines on how to write an effective budget for a humanities-oriented, non-travel based project?
Wow, great. That is a great question, Elizabeth. You have lots of great questions. I want to make sure we meet sometime. That's a great question. I would fall back on your salary and say, you know, if your salary is $100,000 a year, I use that just because it's easy to divide up. And for or your, if your salary divided by the number of months and divided by 12 I think is a perfectly defensible amount. So if you're asked for an amount, I would base it on your salary and say that you're basing it on your salary. When you apply, like for a collaborative grant, like to NEH, you are asked for the amount of what you request, whatever it is your salary is. At your, the idea is that you are not making money, but you are. We try to keep you whole in that that's how much we will reimburse or pay you. So that's what I would do. Try to base it in something that makes sense and that everyone can easily understand. In most cases, agencies or organizations that request a budget know in the humanities that we're going to give all sorts of things that aren't usable. At NEH, we used to tell our panelists, just ignore the budgets, we'll work with them. And then we give you a chance to, if we don't think that you've defended what your budget figures, we would give you an opportunity to tweak that later on. So that's what I would do. The other option is, why not just call the organization and ask? All of these organizations, ACLS, APS, the library, NEH, they hire people specifically to help applicants apply and access the money. So if you're concerned about the amount that you put into your budget, ping them. Again, I'll provide contacts for these organizations. But if you need a contact ever and you can't find one, let me know. I probably have one. So that you can ask, give them a call, send them an email, and ask what they want there. The other thing is, I always find the federal per diem schedule to be useful. If you're doing travel and you're trying to figure out how much money you're going to need when you travel, the federal per diem table for the year is always a good place to look. I do want to say that it matters in this case how the panel works. I mentioned that they do panels where the applicant or the panelists don't necessarily meet to discuss your application. That probably means you have one, maybe two shots when a panelist reads your application before they give it a grade. So you got to make it count. So when you're reading the opportunity, pay special attention to the language that APS uses, and then make sure that you parrot that back to the panelists, because they are going to be looking for that. And it's not like, if they can't find something, they can't ask another panelist, where was this? I don't remember, blah, 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 blah. That kind of discussion's not going to happen. So it does matter how this works. Use the fact that we submit these things digitally to your advantage. Make sure you have the language, because I tell you, as someone who has served as a panelist, if I'm looking for, where did they talk about the significance of their project, I will sometimes Control F or whatever it is, and I will look for significance and find out where you talk about it if I'm looking for it. So use the language that is in the guidelines, and that's something for all grants that you apply for. Who gets funded? I've just with ACLS, University of South Florida hasn't had a winner in the last 4 cycles that I can find. In the last 4 cycles, however, we do have some Franklin winners. One has moved on, I think, but the others, these are all people in the Department of History. So good job, Department of History. A lot of people think that because it's called the American Philosophical Society, it doesn't have anything for them. Yes, it funds philosophy. Yes, it funds work on literature. Yes, it funds lab work if you are not in the humanities and you're working some kind of lab. So there, it funds social sciences. Yes. Okay. Is it worth it?
I'm sorry. Since you paused, I did want to do a shout out to all the staff at all these institutions.
Yeah.
Both research development staff, sponsored research officers, and research administrators in colleges and departments. They are so good at helping align budgets to navigate systems, uploading forms, converting things to PDF, all the things that we need to do to upload our proposals. So just wanted to give a shout out. Thank you so much, Russ.
Yeah, and I have, this is actually coming up here in a minute. There's so many resources right on your campus to help you. So Elizabeth asked that question about the budget before. You know, the first place to go probably is to your research office and find out what they use, and they can help you with that. And if you don't want to make that call to the grantor, chances are they will. You have so many good resources, and there's a whole profession dedicated to getting grants for you and your institution. Use those folks. It's really important. And it's also, it might be that for some of these grants, they actually have to push the button and submit it for you. So it's good to know them. If you don't, it's not weird at all just to drop in and say, hi, I'm here. I think I'm going to apply for grants. I want to know who you are. That's not weird at all. Trust me. So is APS worth it? I think it is. There are two deadlines. One comes up in December. So if you can apply for in October, you can apply in December. They don't provide feedback. That kind of sucks, but okay. The kind of application, it's a kind of application that rewards brevity because you have a lot of work to do with just a few characters. And I want to talk a little bit about residential fellowships. I'm going to speed up here a little bit. Residential centers come in three flavors. Those that focus on community, those that focus on their collections, that's most of them, and those that focus on their location. And when you put together an application for a residential center, what you're trying to do is marry up your project with their mission. So you're looking to see if, is this a place like the National Humanities Center doesn't have any collections, but they have an incredible community. And what they're banking on is that working together with other scholars is going to enrich your own scholarship. And so they are primarily a writing center, and there are others like them. Most are collections, and they want you to marry up your project with what they have collected. The Library of Congress has the largest research collection in the world. You probably can't give me an area that you're working that they don't have collections that would benefit. But it means you're going to have to do research before you put together an application because you have to know their collections. It can be a good place to start is simply to reach out to them and say, I want to know more about your collections in X. There are some places where the collections are incredibly rich. For example, at the library, the biggest collection of Russian material is in Washington, D.C. The biggest collection of Chinese material is in Washington, D.C. You could go over to Russia or to China and look at things But if you want one sort of a one-stop place for material, it's at the Library of Congress. It's incredibly rich. There are a lot of centers that are based on their location. There are American research centers around the globe, and places like in Egypt, in Jordan, in Greece, in Italy, in Germany, all of those places, and just around the world, in China, in Senegal, in Morocco. So if you have a kind of place, if you're doing a kind of work that needs for you to be in a particular place, it's really important that you know the center. They are a particularly good bet right now because they have a good funding ratio. A lot of people don't want to travel right now. I get it, but if you are one of these people who likes to travel, it's a good time to take advantage of these places. And the centers are motivated right now because they know since COVID, people want to do things differently. And so they are offering things to make themselves more flexible and to expand their opportunities. So giving stipends for childcare, making it so that you don't have to be in residence all the time, just some of the time, providing additional travel expenses so that you can shuttle back and forth to wherever you live. There are lots of options. There's a lot of experimentation going on, and I encourage you to sort of look through it. The Kluge Center at the library is in some ways the quintessential, I think, a residential center based on a collection. I've already talked about their collections, but there are other places. The Huntington Library, the Newberry Library, American Antiquarian Society, in Philadelphia, the Library Company. So there are collections all over the US and around the world that they're going to ask you for pretty much the same thing. They're going to ask you for a cover sheet, a CV, an abstract, a collection statement. Everyone will call it something slightly different, but talking about how your project relates to their collections. You'll need a proposal and a work plan, of course, and in this case, 2 letters. Again, it's about 1 in 10, 1 in 11 at Kluge. It's a good option. It's only for junior scholars, though. So this is one of those things to put on the list that Sandy mentioned. The Librarian of Congress is the one who makes the final decision based on what an interdisciplinary panel tells him. And so they have a rapidly approaching deadline of in mid-September. The criteria are pretty much what you find, but notice that significance, if you compare it to ACLS, isn't as developed. And it's important, but it's not as important because what they care about first and foremost, why don't they put it first? I don't know. But for what they care about first and foremost is the appropriateness of the research for the Library of Congress collections. Again, you can apply to write, but you have to be doing some research and you have to be using their collections. And it has to be work done not just at a regular, something that you can't get done at your own library. Okay. That you have to use the Library of Congress. And most research libraries in their grant applications will have the same kind of request. Is it worth it? Maybe. Here, I'm not an enthusiastic yes, because it just depends on your personal situation. Can you get away for a period of 4 to 12 months? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Don't rule it out. If you think, oh, I can't possibly do it, look, because a lot of places, I think the Newberry and the Huntington have been particularly good about building in all sorts of interesting flexibility into their awards. So look at those. It depends on the stage of your project. If you're at a really late stage, you're probably not going to need collections anymore, and you might have just timed out. And so there are options that are out there. It might be worth it for you. It might not. I want you to really pay attention to the guidelines. As you can tell, and the reason I did this is that every set of guidelines is different, and it's going to require your attention. So the number one recommendation always is read the guidelines and read them again. Really pay attention to those details, because the devil is in the details. If you're going to apply for ACLS, I want you to think about including at least 3 different distinct arguments for why your project is important. That, in my mind, when I'm reading an application, I'm looking for different ways to think about significance. And there's nothing magic about 3. You might have 10, great. But everyone, I think, can find at least 3 different ways to say why their project is important. Don't be afraid of using an example, especially if you're doing something that's more theoretical or unusual, especially if you have an interdisciplinary panel. A lot of times, a well-chosen example is the one way you can bring a panelist into what you are doing and to help them understand. Make sure you have ties to the latest scholarship, or you probably know that there's payoff and that you have momentum. Those are things that are really important for ACLS. For APS, it's organization. Because you are working for a short amount of time, they want to make sure you're going to jump in, you're going to be ready to go, and you're going to be able to use that time wisely. Organization is really important to them. Remember, one of the things you're going to have to do with short grants is talk about what you are doing right then with the grant, and then you have to talk about the big picture, what the project's all about, because they want to know that it's going to be finished one day. So it's a delicate balance. Leave yourself enough time when you write to achieve that balance between your small project that you're going to undertake for a month compared to your large project, which might take two more years to finish. Residential centers, remember to align what you're doing with their mission and with their community. So think about those things if you're going to put in an application for one of those grants.
And Russ,
yes.
We had a question. Are there sample proposals available upon request?
Did Sandy ask that?
She did, but it was liked by a couple of other attendees, so yeah. Yes.
So here's what I can tell you. ACLS, I just talked to them yesterday about what they're doing, because I know they are in the process of putting sample applications, successful applications up on the web for everyone to download. They have not done it yet. They are hoping to do it before their September 15th deadline. I wouldn't count on it, but it will be up in some of their programs already have them. I would expect that they will provide them. What I would do is use their database to find someone in your field or at your institution, and then ask them if you could look at their application. It is sample applications. I know for me, I don't like sample applications. I don't use them, but I know there are a lot of people who do. NEH has a lot of sample applications available, for example. And so, though that's great. A lot of times people make them available on their personal websites as well. APS, they do not make them available. And so you really have to find someone who's won. I would love to provide mine, except it was so long ago, I don't think it's really relevant. The Library of Congress will provide them upon request. So if you want to see one and you ask, they will provide one. And that's because they're part of the government, and it's part of, they have to.
So Russ, why don't you like sample proposals?
I think the problem is, for me, I know where my project is, and I think it encourages people to write a kind of application that is not right for them. Every application you're going to have a slightly different strategy, and I think sample applications for me sort of cloud what I want to do. And so that's just me. You know, some people are visual learners and some are textual learners, and you know, if there's not one that's right or wrong, this is just, for me, that's what I do.
That's a great answer. What I do like about sample proposals is it shows tone and general shape of a proposal so that people know not to spend half of their proposal on overview and background or get buried in some section of it to the extent they are not really building through the holistic. It gives them an idea of what a winning proposal may look like, but there is a danger of using it in too prescriptive a way.
Yeah. And yes, one of the things you know that we're going to talk about this afternoon is NEH has started being very clear about what they want. So they say, in your narrative, you should spend about a page talking about significance. You should then talk, then you should do a historiography section. That's about, a page and a half. They give you actually some pretty clear guidance about how much, and I'm of a mixed mind on that. If you are not once I think you start writing grants, you get a feel for what's important in your project. So here's something I need to talk a little bit more about because it's a little bit more important. Here's something I can talk a little less about. If you're new, I love the way that NEH is now doing that. There's so many things I don't like about NEH right now, but this is something I think is really good if you're new to grant writing. But yeah, if you specifically ask a grantor for an application or a sample, a lot of them will have something that they can share with you. And if they're a government, if they're part of either a state or federal government, they almost have to provide that to you as part of the what do you call it? The
regulations.
Well, not the regulations. There's a specific act, a Freedom of Information Act. They have to provide that to you. The last thing I want you to do, everyone, just to think about is think about where you're strong. Think about what things make your project strong, what makes you strong, and that's where you should start your application. Honestly, is where you're strong. Argue from your strengths. It doesn't make sense in a way because grants are all about what you don't have. You don't have the money, you don't have the time. And so it's tempting to start off by saying, I need these things. And that has to be in your application, don't get me wrong. But if you are going to show that you are going somewhere with this project, talk about why you're strong. Talk about, in my article, blah, 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 I do this, now I'm going to the next stage. You know, it can be your classroom. If you're at a teaching intensive place, talk about how your classroom has an impact on your research. These are all sort of, think about where you're strong and go from there. I think that's really important. And don't take it personally. If you are rejected, don't take it personally. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, allow yourself to be irritated for a day or two, and then don't let it discourage you, because so many people do, and then they just drop out. And it might be that just with a little bit of work, your project will be funded next year. But people get angry and they think, oh, NEH, APS, ACLS, they'll never fund me. That's really not true. And if you win, also don't take it personally. They're not your best friends. It's a business relationship. So it works both ways. So plan ahead. I want you to diversify your portfolio. And I want you to realize that when you succeed, even the fact that you hit the button and submit the application, that is a success. And it's going to help you every time you submit an application to submit a better application next time. You know, if you get the money, great, but you've already won when you hit the submit button. When you get this from David, you'll see I've given you a lot of resources. At the bottom, I've given you grantor contacts for each of the agencies I've talked about or organizations I've talked about. I know them all, so just tell them that I sent you or that I recommended that you reach out to them. A lot of times people think they have to have an introduction. Use my name if you need to. If you want to contact us somewhere else, just drop me a line. And you can drop me a line. There's my my email and my URL. If you're a USF faculty member, I do keep office hours. Right now they're virtual until I get back down in the Tampa Bay area. Mondays 2 to 4 and Thursdays 9 to 11. If those don't work, just let me know. And I've given you a link there so that you can schedule some time with me if you're a USF faculty member. So we have a little bit of time left. Hopefully there are a few more questions in the chat. David, you're going to stop.
You've covered everything in chat, but we'll certainly encourage people to raise their hands and ask whatever didn't get answered. Go ahead, Yukamaki.
Hi, it's Bukamaka. Thank you for your presentation. I believe you mentioned you might be providing some resources.
Yep.
Yeah.
The second to the last slide is
Okay.
a series of URLs and that you can use for they're related to the talk today. If there's some resources that you're looking for that I don't have there, just shoot me a message, and if I have something, I'll gladly send it out.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say hi to Megan since she's here. I see on my screen. Good friend, good Victorianist.
Welcome, Megan. I heard you were coming. Russ was excited.
I'm trying to figure out, can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Yeah, sorry, we're trying to figure out how to open up my mic. I have a question about asking letter writers. You would think that as a, somebody who's been in the field for a while, it would get easier, but it doesn't seem to get easier. And I wanted to ask you, Russ, if you have suggestions about the best kinds of letter writers for different kinds of tasks, or any other advice about that.
It's funny. I just talked to someone else who I think is on the call about letters the other day, and it's gonna some organizations, if you're going to apply for Guggenheim, for example, there's all sorts of advice about letters, and you have to have the most prestigious letter writer, former winner, all of that. Places like NEH, we always say we want someone who can talk authoritatively about what you're doing. And that's the best letter writer. And if the person doesn't have the biggest name, but if they take the time to read your application and to respond thoughtfully, that's the important thing. And I think different places have different letter cultures with the letters. And I think that's why ACLS has eliminated them. Because, so in my mind, I would rather read a letter that helps me understand the application better and from a slightly different perspective. So I would encourage you to try to find someone who's going to take the time to write a good letter. And don't worry if that person is the biggest name or not. Your former colleague, Anne Coldiron, once told me she had kind of a golden touch with asking for getting grants. And then I asked her one time what she did. She told me that when she went to her letter writers, she told them exactly what she wanted them to say. As someone who writes a lot of letters, I also appreciate that. And so it's something to consider. If you want them to talk about why your project is important, explain it. She had a gap in her career and she didn't want to talk about it in her resume, but she wanted that understood. So she had a letter writer who always explained that. So there are things that you can ask your letter writers to do, but the main thing you want them to do is reinforce what you've said in the application. Yeah, I hate asking for letters. Everyone's so pressed for time. I hate it. But it's something you have to do. Give them enough time, and that's the big thing, so that they can write it into their calendars. I hope that helps, Megan. I don't think there's anything magic.
Yeah, no, very helpful. Thank you.
And Russ, then Diana would like to know, how can grants office staff best encourage their faculty to apply for fellowships like these?
Well, you're going to have a more expansive, probably, list of deadlines. I think it's all about being proactive. Faculty members, especially once they get into the term, kind of put blinders on. And unless you can break through and remind them, ACLS coming up September 15th, Kluge coming up October 1st. Unless you're constantly reminding them, it will fall off their radar. Mm. So proactive, a proactive approach is what you're going to need. And just remind them that there's help available to them. I don't think there's anything, it's kind of like, just old-fashioned reaching out, and you can't force them to apply. So you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
So just keep leading them to water, Diana, and they will eventually need a drink, and you'll be there. And that's the only thing I can say. One of the things that I've learned from Sandy and her staff is that they're constantly putting themselves in the Research Development Institute out there to remind folks at USF that they're there. And I think that's really important.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you. Many people think of research development offices at universities as those people that help bring in the big $10 million, $50 million grants. They're not here to help me, right? But they are. They're here to help with red team review. Have you had anyone read your proposal before you're going to submit it? Identify letter writers, talk about strategies, or connect you to a faculty member who's won that award in the past. Don't feel like research development is not here for you. They're here for all faculty.
Amen. And I would also, yeah, they will, and they will probably know more about. They might have a relationship with a grantor already developed, so that they can help you when there's a question that comes up about your project and how it relates to what the grantor's priorities. So, and they're also can be used in a way to sort of, so if you don't want to go to the grantor directly, they can help you with that. Although I would encourage you to not be afraid of grantors. They are there to help you.
This was really great. Thank you so much, Russ. And it's only part one. And I'm so delighted that you're doing a whole series. It's exciting.
Yeah. I hope I didn't give you everything in the first half an hour, first hour and a half, and now I have nothing left to say. But I think this afternoon is going to be pretty darn interesting. I haven't done a collaborative research only kind of webinar before, so it was great fun putting it together. So I'm really excited to do it.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. And this was recorded, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. And there's another recording. You brought your friend Chris Thornton to the 2026 Summer Grant Writing Workshops program. So if anyone would like a copy of that recording, just send an email to Dave, because that was recorded as well.
You don't even have to do that. It's in my list of URL.
Resources.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent.
He's already got it covered.
Bam. That's fantastic. I'm really excited